Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio. This is Paul Catalina's Top 5 at 5:55, presented by Champion Salon and Barber. To book your appointment, go to championsalonandbarber.com.
All right. I don't know why. Oh, that's why. Sorry, I have my list up here.
Still going on and on in the chat room with the appearance of Jimmy Hart.
Shout out to, it's been cool to see a lot of those names roll by. Big Van Vader, definitely a legend, RIP to him. But Nikita Koloff, nice mention by somebody of the Russian Nightmare. He is not necessarily one that comes immediately top to mind, but he was fantastic.
No, somebody mentioned Stacy Keebler, Paul.
Yeah.
Your eyes.
She does immediately come to top of my mind, actually.
The erstwhile former girlfriend of George Clooney. Yeah. All right. Top 5 signs your coach is about to get fired. So when you start to see these things, just get ready. Your coach is about to get fired, whether it's in that year or in the next year. All right. Number 5, you lose the same way every time. If you lose in different ways, sometimes it's just an experience. It comes up and bites you. But when your team finds a way to lose the games the same way every time, and the coach can't fix that one thing, that's the first sign.
Well, I'm going to check off these right here.
Yeah.
For my favorite program, check 5.
Yeah, I mean, I think
penalties, post-game, post-play penalties.
I think in Nebraska immediately.
Special teams.
Yeah, I mean, typically it's just bad execution, turnovers, penalties. I mean, the same thing that ail any team. Same things that ailed, Baylor on Saturday in some cases. But, yeah, you kind of fall into this funk and this rhythm of you just can't get out of, and that's the downward spiral for sure.
Yep. Number 4, your rival drills you on the recruiting trail. This is what
I'm glad you clarified on the recruiting trail.
Look, you can lose to your rival in the games, and that's always going to hurt. But ultimately, when they're absolutely just taking you to the woodshed and recruiting, and this one is probably particularly more directed at what Dan Mullen's going through right now, because the one team he has to get better than in the SEC East right now is Georgia, who's their big in-conference rival.
And Florida has done that.
They've done it.
Yeah.
The thing is that the gap between recruiting in Georgia and Florida right now is so prodigious that you wonder how he's going to make it up. Because Georgia right now is just absolutely out recruiting them, circles around them. Dan Mullen can't even go out and recruit because he's suspended from doing it. So that's going to hurt you with your fans. It's going to hurt you just on the field, generally.
Well, one thing that led to Mac Brown's downfall was the fact that he was not recruiting at as high a level. Now, I don't know if it was necessarily, losing straight up to OU on too many guys. It was more misevaluations, not finding a quarterback, and the ones you did find, Garrett Gilbert, were bust, or him in particular. He had some other good quarterbacks. But, yeah, I mean, you start losing big-time recruits to your rival. I mean, that's going to get boosters uneasy and fans uneasy, and I don't know how much that's happening in Florida right now or in Gainesville, but it's happened often enough, it seems like, that that's a big part of the reason why he could be on his way out sooner than later. So, yeah, it's one thing when the results start failing, but once the recruiting starts failing, that's when the big alarms really start to go off.
Yeah. Number 3, rants at journalists. If you decide to take a segment of your your press conference out to rant at a journalist who wrote something about you publicly,
or even someone in person who asked you a question.
But but if there are many coaches that'll call journalists up and be like, "Hey, I'm not crazy about what you said or what you wrote. Let's talk about it." That's the way you do it if you're not worried about losing your job. When you start worrying about losing your job, it's when you're like, "Why would you write that?" And you call them out in front of their peers, which doesn't really hurt the journalist most of the time. It's only giving them more attention. And 2, it hurts you because what does it matter to you what they say? You know what goes on in your own life better than they do. They're just writing their own observation.
Yeah, I find it funny that Gary Patterson rented, what was his name?
Matt
Jennings. And, like a day and a half later, he's leaving the program. Yeah. So, maybe instead of yelling at Matt Jennings, you should have, patted him on the back and said, you know what, you saw this coming before most people, because it turns out he was dead right. You, too, agreed that TCU needed to change in direction. But, yeah, he's the one that I think of right here. Sarkisian's, lost 4 in a row now. And, his very first post-game press conference question was about, how hard they played or the lack of how hard they played in Ames. And he's like, well, that's certainly your opinion. And then he just kept on, and it was funny because he's obviously dismissing that, opinion entirely. But he did. He just moved on. He didn't rant about it. If he was in danger of his job, that could have turned into like a whole tantrum probably. But instead, he's just like, whatever, and moved on. Yeah.
And number 2, coordinators get fired.
Yeah, that's always
coordinators get fired, and that's what you have to do. And some of these guys, and this is the really hard part, some of these guys are your best friends, the ones that you're your most trusted confidants, and you have to turn to them and say like, hey, I've got to fire you so I don't get fired.
Yeah, I mean, there's sometimes obviously where you're replacing them because they go elsewhere just for another job. Like Baylor's gonna have to replace Joey McGuire, although he's not a coordinator. But yeah, when you're starting to, like the Washington situation, and it's gotten so bad that you finally just have no choice, but you have to fire your OC. Yeah, that's when it gets to the point where you just don't even have a choice anymore. Things are going really poorly.
Jimmy Lake, by the way, released a statement. Sorry about whatever happened. I know you're going to number 1, and it helps to represent the program better. We'll see if he survives or not.
And number 1, the AD vote of confidence.
Oh, yeah.
That's the one. And it's not the AD saying, like, no, look, we're not firing the coach. There's no reason. There's no more. We have every confidence in Coach X to right the ship, and no decisions have been made at this time.
Well, you're not talking about it if he's not losing.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not asking questions of how confident are you in Nick Saban currently? Well, I mean, that's a duh question because you're feeling great about Nick Saban. You only start asking about how confident you are when you're probably not that confident. And, yeah, the vote of confidence is the dreaded last step before dismissal more often than not.
Yeah. If somebody asks how confident are you in Nick Saban, you'd be like, how confident am I in a nuclear weapon and annihilate this place?
Stupid question.
As opposed to, like, how confident are you in Dan Mullen? You'd be like, well, we brought a pillow to a gunfight. So I don't know. I mean, right now and it's weird in the coaching business now. And you heard, I want people to go back and listen to Zach Barnett. He made a good point of, if you've not been fired by now, you might be safe because the reason people get fired earlier in October is so that they can get out in front of the recruiting thing so they can try and build a recruiting class. Well, Florida and Nebraska made the decision to keep Scott Frost, and Florida might keep Dan Mullen because what fish are going to be in the water, especially when they're going to have to go up against LSU and Penn State, programs that are on their level historically.
Yep, I agree. Trev Alberts kind of gave that. Someone asked for that last week with Frost. He didn't give it. And then today, of course, they came up with the agreement that they restructured his deal. All right.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I know we really got to go, but I mean, just as far as the options out there, I mean, look around right now. I mean, other than pulling a guy from another big school, where are you really looking? It's like there's been so many college coaching changes that have they kind of run through the gamut? I mean, I know there's an Elko. You can look to Georgia, obviously. So there's still big-time coordinators, potentially on the line. But so many coaches get run through so quickly that it's turning into retreads and not as many new names surfacing because there's so much turnover. So
sometimes the best hire is not to have one. You just kind of let it kind of grind your way through the tough times, even if it's such a tough business right now. Armstrong Sims, great stuff. Thanks to Jack McKenzie, just got back from the women's basketball presser. Appreciate